Good afternoon, I hope everyone's well today. Thank you for watching, it is appreciated as always. If you like this channel and you like this video, consider liking and subscribing and maybe sharing the video. It is appreciated. Beijing isn't going to be too happy with Keir this week, and I'm here for it. They're not here for the Labour government either, and I'm here for that as well. And we're going to get into what I think is going on. So the first thing we've got is Keir is dealt an enormous blow as Patriot peers defeat the Chagos surrender 4 times. Now, up until this all kicked off last year regarding the Chagos Islands, I had no idea about the Chagos Islands, at least under that name. I knew we had British Indian Ocean territory, which is what I always called it, but the actual name, the Chagos Islands, that's a new one on me. It's ours. It's British Indian Ocean territory from the Empire. It's ours. Deal with it. That's the end of it. That's my particular view. However, we need a bit of context here. Legally speaking, which I'll get into later in the video, nobody's making us give up this territory. Nobody's forcing us to do it. There's an advisory ruling, which is not binding by the UN, to say that Mauritius should have it. That's pretty much it. What you need is a bit of context. You've got 2 global superpowers. You've got the communists in China, and you've got the free world in America. And they are the big boys on the block. And you've got the Prime Minister hedging his bets, which is why he's willing to give up our sovereign territory abroad to appease the communists. The communists have something called the Belt and Road Scheme, which is basically doing up and refurbishing and basically putting infrastructure in all over the world. And as a result, these countries are in hock financially to China. And Mauritius is one of these countries. They are on the communist side. So you have 2 tiers here willing to give up British territory that's going to help the Chinese interests and not necessarily America or Britain's interest. That's my view on the geopoliticals of this particular scenario. Now we're going to get into what actually happened with the House of Lords, because the House of Lords have defeated this bill. Keir has suffered a new blow in his bid to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. The Prime Minister was defied by peers over the agreement that will see the archipelago transferred to Mauritius, in a deal experts warn could cost the British taxpayer, you or me, my money, your money, $35 billion. As part of this agreement, the UK will rent back Diego Garcia, the island that is home to British and American military base. Part of the agreement is expected to cost more than $30 billion in cash terms over the next 99 years. Part 1. On Monday, peers voted narrowly in favour of negotiating the treaty to ensure Britain would stop making repayments if the use of the military base for military purposes became impossible. This proposal, which is likely to be reversed by Labour MPs, would see and mean reopening talks with the Mauritius government, so the UK would not have to pay to rent back the base if the environment or other issues render it unsuitable or unusable. While Keir Starmer's MPs are likely to defy the ruling of the peers, the vote will delay the deal's formal agreement. The islanders established a government to coordinate their efforts to prevent the Prime Minister from ceding the territory. Let's forget that the initial and original inhabitants of the island, the Chagosians, were largely brought over to the mainland, brought over to Britain, given British citizenship, and now we're ceding their territory without them even having a vote on the matter. Then we get into this here. This is the third part. Families who had been displaced from the archipelago from 67 to 73 chose Misley Mandarin to lead the campaign to keep the islands under British rule. The British government has been warned that handing over the Chagos Islands would risk the loss of one of the world's most important and unspoiled natural environments. The islands are home to almost 800 species of fish, 300 types of coral, 280 species of plants, ferns, and 50 species of birds. While the Mauritian government says it's committed to preserving the terrestrial and marine environment of the archipelago, the peers have raised concerns that Britain would have no legal recourse if these pledges were not upheld. So similar to what happened with British Hong Kong, when we ceded that back to the communists in 1997, We were given certain assurances by the communists that they weren't going to interfere with the internal governance of Hong Kong for at least 50 years. How did that work out? It seems that international law only applies to some countries, not all countries. So why are we adhering to it if America and the communists aren't? Then we get into the final part here. Lord Foulkes, Casey, former Justice Minister, has tabled the amendments to ensure that no agreement with Mauritius is ratified until robust environmental assurances are secured. The House of Lords voted on Tuesday this week to back the controversial amendment, dealing the Prime Minister another setback in his efforts to push through the deal. Keir insists the deal is the only way to adequately protect the Diego Garcia base from the influence of countries like China. That's bullshit. It's so China has control of it. So we're going to leave that one here. This is the entire thing, and I want to paint you a little picture. 19th century, Britain and its empire was the number one player in town. 20th century, America's century, biggest boy on the block. There's currently a standoff between America and China on who's going to rule the 21st century. Some people think it should be the communists. Some people assert it should be America. Then we look into why they would be ceding it over. Well, what about all these surveillance cameras and all of this dodgy technology that's going to be used to install a digital ID? It's all going to be coming from China. It's all going to be coming from the communists, which is how they keep their population under check. What do you think happens if Britain decides to start becoming a bit more hostile towards China and a little less pragmatic, is the phrase that the British government would use when dealing with the communists? They may not give us all this stuff for basically nothing. That's my particular view. They might just say, no, I'm not going to play with you anymore. Moving on to this here, this is the dodgy legal context that we're giving away our own territory and paying for the privilege. In February 2019, the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, issued a non-binding advisory opinion requested by the UN Secretary General, or the General Assembly, stating that the UK's detachment from the Chagos Islands was unlawful and incompatible with decolonisation of Mauritius. It called the UK to end its administration as rapidly as possible and allow Mauritius decolonisation to be completed. What they don't say here is Mauritius never had the Chagos Islands. There were never Mauritius Islands to begin with. That was never a thing. Alright? In May 2019, the UN General Assembly passed a non-binding resolution endorsing the ICJ opinion and urging UK to withdraw its administration within 6 months. In January 2021, the International Tribunal for Law of the Sea ruled that the maritime boundary between Mauritius and the Maldives, and that the UK no longer had sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, affirming the new Mauritius claim. However, this is not binding to the UK and it was not party to the case. So this is all done by other countries and we're expected to go along with it, and as I previously has stated, Mauritius never had them to begin with. And then we come on to this finally. None of these rulings impose a legally binding obligation on the UK to surrender sovereignty. The ICJ opinion is advisory. The UN General Assembly resolutions are recommendations without enforcement power, and the ITLOS decision is not blind non-parties. The UK has no standing bilateral treaty with Mauritius that would compel cessation, and it has excluded compulsory ICJ jurisdiction over sovereignty, i.e. we don't have to do it. So why is Keir wanting to do it? Simply because he wants to appease his buddies in Beijing. And this is why the Chinese are going to be pissed. They're going to be pissed off that they're not getting part of their Belt and Road scheme from the British. As always, this is just my opinion. Your mileage may vary. But do you think that we should be giving this away? I certainly don't. I want to keep all our colonial possessions, thank you very much. I don't want them to go to Mauritius. I don't want them to go to America. I don't want them to go to anybody that isn't Britain. Now, obviously, your mileage may vary. Comment below, let me know, and you let me know, do you think China's pissed? Because I certainly do. Like and subscribe, do all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next video. You have a good day.